Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Solo Mode, Master Duel, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel Solo Mode. So we did, and the crowd goes wild, although in fairness, I really didn't manage to accomplish much success using the loner decks, and then I played off screen and accomplished all of the loner deck challenges, and I've cleaned up one more of these solo modes, so now everything is marked complete in this ever-growing super long list of solo modes up to the Dimensional Observers of S-Force, and those are not loner deck challenges but custom deck challenges, so I can get that done pretty much at any point, so they're not high priority. Which means we will today look at the Struggle of the Six Samurai, which this is a continuation of a story, and definitely it's a case where I do not remember any part of the indomitable warriors of unwavering loyalty. Just on the face of it, I would assume that this is a collection of different colored characters, and the different colored characters mean that, like, this is a dark character and this is a light character, and this would be like an earth character and a water character, and maybe there's a earth and maybe there's a fire character. So I would imagine that's what they're lining up for, and I assume storyline wise this will be a samurai style story. No matter what life or death trials await the six samurai on the battlefield, they always have each other's back. Their solidarity is what will allow them to unite the nation. Interesting. It's interesting. You also have like this hard break here. Like, I don't believe I have anything special going on with the dots per inch as far as fonts, nor do I even really believe that this game would respond to the dots per inch as far as having a higher scaled up font. But even if I did have something here, having a hard break is just an example of poor user interface programming. Like, undoubtedly, the makers of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel know that this game, a version of this game, is going to be played on a cell phone, and the width of a cell phone is definitely not set in stone. There are a lot of different standards and formats, so it should have a better built-in system to say it needs to break in a more appropriate way, which the more appropriate way here would be to probably break after the letter it, the word is here, or solidarity, and move the rest of that up, making it 2 lines. So Warriors of Yore says, in the age where fierce warriors clashed without cease, the one closest to securing complete conquest was the renowned Xian. For him to arrive at this point, many heroic sacrifices had to be made. So in this case, it's just going to be focusing on one warrior that may have very little connection to these other warriors, and this may just be a continuation of a card expansion, a backstory narrative of a card expansion that had several releases, or at least 2 releases, which it does seem like on a rare occasion, maybe there's just like 1 out of 4 expansions per year that get popular enough in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game that they make a continuation of that expansion, or those are the expansions that really matter. I've definitely seen that in Magic the Gathering too, where there have been some expansions that really matter in the minds and the hearts of the creators of Magic, and thus they go back to those stories and focus on those stories. Whereas, particularly in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the vast majority of expansions don't matter and never get returned to. And that's not super wrong, or wrong in any way, because it does make a lot of sense that the popular thing should be returned to. But in the case of a 25-year-old card game, it noticeably didn't ever lead to any real stability. Yu-Gi-Oh! Stability is that expansions will be weird and different. Whereas I could see a card game experiment in several different ways and realize that, say, samurai or robots are the things people really like, and just then double down on samurai and robots. But then probably not for a collectible card game, because you always need that fresh material so you can sell more card packs. It's way easier to lock into a style if you're already sold the product and you're just adding the occasional DLC or update. So it looks like we've got a lot of story here with 2 scenarios, but outside of that, this is still the new style where you're just doing a short practice in a duel. Like, it is fairly far away from these older styles where scenario practice duel, and I've seen it certainly worse too. I've seen like scenario practice duel, more duels. But yeah, it certainly makes sense to try and keep it short. Let's hop in here and see what the story is all about. Warriors of Yore, all in silence. This is the story of the great Shogun Shien. Was a young man, became known as the warlord who virtually dominated the land. Some of this story pretty obviously is going to echo at least the mythical history of the warlords in the feudal era of Japan. So a Japanese player almost certainly would relate to this story a lot more than your average Western player who knows nothing of that history. In the time of the warring states, there were those who ran across the battlefield like shooting stars. They claimed victory after victory. Their country expanded its territory at a breakneck pace. The shogun ruled the country and led its armies with great skill. Especially outstanding were the 6 warriors under his command. People called them the 6 samurai, so we get a throwback to the 6 samurai. Although notably, all 6 of these samurai, there's a deep red art style or color palette for their armor, except for the green one and the black one here. Rumors of these mighty warriors and the shogun they sort of spread among the neighboring countries. He stood in battle alongside the 6 samurai and never faced defeat, yet he carried a small seed of worry. One day he fell ill to a disease that had infested his body. Still, the shogun hid it from all but a few close associates and ruled the country vigorously without rest. He continued to fight fiercely, as if shaking off the disease. I don't know when the Lord is resting. No one has ever seen the shogun sleeping. As these jokes were uttered by the soldiers and the people, one day the last straw broke on the camel's back. Again, the translation to English not great here. Broke on the camel's back. You would never use the word on there. It would be broke the camel's back. Just when he was preparing for a big battle, the shogun fell ill and died an unexpected death. Again, you probably wouldn't say unexpected there. I cannot let other countries know of my father's death now. One of the 6 samurai and son of the shogun was Shi In. Shi In kept his father's death under wraps and led the army into battle in his place. The target was a mountainous country located in the east of the Castle of Mist. It was a castle that served as the enemy base. Terrain analysis, troop size, strategy, all of the above were calculated, and victory seemed assured. However, the enemy had seen right through Xian and his advances. Enemy troops in the trees on the mountainside all attacked Xian and the 6 samurai. The 6 samurai struggled to hold their own, but they faced an unexpectedly desperate battle. As enemy soldiers attacked with increasing vigor, Xian finally ordered his troops to retreat. However, in the moments there was a great disturbance in the line of command. After all, these were soldiers who had never lost a battle. The majority of them had no experience in retreating. Moreover, the confusion caused by the surprise attack and receiving orders from a different commander made matters worse. Morale was lowered as one by one the soldiers were taken out. If this continues, they could be routed. Or rooted. I'm not sure how you pronounce it in that case. That was when one of the 6 samurai, Shinai, who was alongside Xian, suddenly turned around. He then offered these words to Xian: "Our unit will serve as the rear guard. The main unit must survive and return to the country at any cost." He was the strongest man among the 6 samurai reserved, but also the warrior Xian's late father trusted the most. Xian saw the determination in Shinai's eyes, and once again he ordered the entire army to retreat. As Shinai watched Xian, he seemed to smile silently with approval. This is how the 6 samurai and Xian barely escaped to their country. But even as Xian's wounds from the war began to heal, not a single man from Shinai's unit ever returned. He had lost his father, who was the shogun and a soldier of the 6 samurai. For Xian and for the remaining 6 samurai, this battle was a bitter defeat they would never forget. This does highlight a problem of naming your group the 6 samurai. As soon as one samurai leaves the group's name falls apart and the morale falls apart around that. There is an interesting question when you start to even have the beginnings of understanding of the history of many Asian countries, China, Japan, pretty much all of them, in that they have a fairly long history of being smaller countries that fought amongst each other until they unified into rather large unified countries. That is something that's somewhat unfamiliar to United States people in particular, because there is not really a belief or treatment of the Native Americans who were in North America as being country holders, more calling them tribes, more just kind of lowering them down to being savages, which at a certain level there might very well be some level of accuracy to that, but yeah, in the United States there just really isn't that much history of warring states, except for the Civil War, and even the Civil War wasn't that long, and it was only between 2 parties. And there is a question, certainly in my mind, as far as how big is too big to have a unified country. Arguably, a United States citizen probably would have a feeling, and if they aren't tactful might say it out loud, that, say, Russia is probably too big. Although there's certainly an argument that because most of Russia's populace is rather in the same area, the landmass isn't really a factor. There's an argument that China is way too big. I think if a Chinese citizen could be honest about that, they probably would agree with that, because there are definitely some, from the outside looking in, it seems like there's quite a few territories in China that barely speak the same dialects, barely speak the same language, have completely different languages. Certainly the British Empire was way too big. You have entire countries that are being colonized that have no shared history and have no real reason to want to be unified. And inherently, I guess that is the desire to unify. It keeps countries together, at least at the beginning. Of course, it's the force of different shoguns in this case, fighting each other and unifying the country that is the initial unifier. I would argue that the landmass of Japan is a little too small to argue that Japan should be separated out. And inherently, even if it was Tokyo became its own independent country and then the rest of Japan was a country, was old Japan, it still would be very imbalanced in the favor of Tokyo. I think most people would like to see the Koreas merged into one. But yeah, it may very well be that landmass was a factor in the past, but in the future it may very well be more of a coalition of resources or opinions and just traditions that becomes the factor. And on some levels there is an appeal to an entire unified planet, depending on who's unifying it and who's in charge. But then there also is an argument for much smaller countries with better, stronger local representation, where you can actually affect change quicker. And that's probably a lot of the basis for the United States, in that you have states that have counties, that have cities, each with different levels of governance on below a federal level of governance. And certainly I am ignorant as far as the history of Japan as to what really happened to turn that last winning shogun into an emperor. Like, that story honestly doesn't feel like it gets told quite enough to foreigners, because during the Warring States era, well, that had to have ended at some point. At some point there had to have been a actual emperor decided and elected, and from that first emperor, Japan still has an emperor, but there also was obviously a change from true direct imperial rule to a more democratic rule. Although you can literally pinpoint when that happened, because that was right after Japan was defeated by the United States in World War II, because the United States rewrote the constitution of Japan, and so undoubtedly that would have been the point where they would have created what is the modern form of governance in Japan. Of course, that all is really just a ramble, and more doing these solo stories is just giving me an excuse to ramble. But why not? It's a prompt to think about something different or talk about something different. It is also certainly an admission that even with two scenarios back to back, I know the story is not going to get into real deep territory. The loss of Shien's father, who was the shogun, soon became known both nationally and internationally. and the distressed citizens of the nation. For the other countries competing to claim supremacy, this was an opportunity they could not have wished for. A warlord from another country might have invaded at any time. This is actually a really nice custom animation, considering how little they do as far as custom animations usually in these. How do they settle this mess? How should they fight in the future? Xian was deep in thought. And then his father's confidant, the one appointed as his guardians, Xian's advisor, told him without hesitation. Wow, you have a character with a nicely animated face. That is also strangely unique too. Now's the time for you to stand as the next shogun. You must prove to the world that you are the one to rule over all the land. And let us not only win battles, let us raise a country that matches the heavenly world. To achieve this, it is essential to build a solid foundation. I imagine in Japan during the Warring States era, resources were fairly scarce. And so, while they may have claimed noble ambitions of unifying the land, for just a raw ambition to have more control and more power, I think the truth is almost certainly in the rice and the food in particular, and maybe silks and other techniques, metalworking, metallurgy, things of value that they could either trade with the outer world or hoard and shoguns can make themselves more wealthy with. When you achieve this, you can call yourself the true master of the world. Most of the Warring States era in Japan, I think, was also the isolationist period in Japan, so that they were mostly just fighting amongst themselves, with them not really interacting with the outside world. Xian's determination was renewed by these words. Using defeat as a springboard, he devised an array of strategies. The country's military and its national influence was enhanced, and they proceeded to invade countries to expand their territories. They devised a system to make it harder to be invaded, and quickly the country stabilized itself. Meanwhile, Xian was also racking up victories in battle. When his smoke signal rose over the battlefields, the soldiers in other countries would tremble in fear. And wow, that's just the end of the story. There's like, he's at least until we get to the goal part. Now, has this given me any hint whatsoever as far as how these cards are going to play? No. I imagine they're going to play very much like the Six Samurai cards played in the past. I just don't remember what that would be the case. Or how that would play. And I would have to assume that this is just cards from a second expansion based around the Six Samurai. Legendary Six Samurai monsters are also Six Samurai monsters, and therefore can share many of the support cards from a Six Samurai deck. The Legendary Six Samurai in particular have many effects that special summon monsters and are useful for synchro summons. Legendary Six Samurai Xian is a powerful monster with the effect that disables and destroys the activation of your opponent's spell and trap cards. It's interesting that they just call everything a monster, even if it is a humanoid looking being. What this also feels like is, if this is the introduction of Legendary Six Samurais as an expansion to Six Samurai decks, and it is focused around special summoning, I wouldn't be surprised if Six Samurai cards are fairly old, and this is an expansion to update the theme so it's more playable in modern times. Like if you can't synchro summon or link summon or let's see, what are these cards? I can't click on it. But yeah, if the original 6 Samurai cards were really just focused around fusion and they didn't have link summon or synchro summon abilities, you would really need to update it for it to be in the modern style of Yu-Gi-Oh play. So I'm going to use my legendary 6 Samurai monsters to win the duel during this turn. Summon legendary 6 Samurai Kagiki. Okay. When this card is normal summoned, you can special summon one level 4 or lower 6 Samurai monster from your hand. While you control a 6 Samurai monsters with a different name, this card gains 1500 attack. So this is just a kind of standard. This is a standard effect monster. Now we're going to special summon Kagikamusha of the 6 Samurai from my hand, which, yeah, during either player's turn, when exactly one face-up 6 Samurai monster you control is targeted by a spell card, or card effect, you can activate this card. That trap card is now targets this face-up card on the field instead. That's interesting, because that might be a case where you could use that based on the card you activate on yourself. You can special summon legendary 6 Samurai Kizan from your hand when there is a 6 Samurai monster on the field. Special summon it now. Now noticeably we can also special summon, but it's not going to let me do that. Now you have the 6 Samurai monsters you need on the field to deal with the opponent's set card. Synchro summon legendary 6 Samurai Xian. Okay. So white borders are synchro summon. You need a warrior tuner and a non-tuner. And I do feel like synchro summons are fairly old mechanics. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is even a third expansion around the 6 Samurai for maybe Pendulum or more link summon tricks. I'm pretty sure there was an entire Yu-Gi-Oh! Animation series around tuners and non-tuners and synchro summoning as the main gimmick. Pretty much for every one gimmick there was another anime series that focused on that, perhaps with an exception to the most recent Yu-Gi-Oh! Animation, which their gimmick is to completely change how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is played. And play a completely different game called Yu-Gi-Oh! Which you sometimes see that too, where you'll have a successful game, and particularly in card games, and they'll try and make a completely different game with completely different rules and give it a similar name. Proceed to the battle phase and attack your opponent's 6 Samurai Yaoriza. Definitely seems like you could do more here. Doesn't even really tell you which one to attack with. Your opponent activated a trap card. The effective legendary 6 Samurai Xian to activate 6 Samurai Xian's ability to negate its activation. Okay. By modern standards, activating an ability to negate some other ability and destroy the card is fairly commonplace and a little boring. Attack your opponent's life points directly and we'll win. Overall though, like when we do these little practice modes, it really is just teaching me one in the game strategy. It's not really helping me with the strategies that you might be helpful to get from the beginning of a game to the end of a game. And so once you get to these loner decks, you have that problem of having to really learn every single card that is listed here, with the exception of this one card, since we didn't really play any other cards. Maybe we summoned like this card and maybe this card, but we really didn't synergize or do anything with them. I suppose pause now if you want to read this. There might be some strategy in it, and there might be some backstory in it. This is also one of those expansions where it seems pretty obvious that they're intent on giving you more of this secondary currency more than giving you an icon or card back or any kind of customizable thing that might be a little bit more interesting, as the secondary currency really just should not exist at all, and it's certainly not appealing or useful. Okay. So we want to get this counter up more so that we could summon something more. I think this makes sense. Because I think now I can do this, which is probably stupid, but we'll see. What are we really trying to get up to? Well, 5 seems to be all we really needed to get up to. That's a 5-star character. Yeah, but it didn't actually work. I thought I was going to be pulling out a monster from the extras deck with the counters, but instead I pulled out a regular monster, which just ended there. This is probably a great example of overplaying your first hand now, because I have basically no options. This guy has 5 cards in his hands and is activating a spell already. And all I have is this trap card. Let's see. We have no tuner cards. So let's take one of these, which is low. And then let's take that one, which has a high attack. I guess there's a lot of room here to learn and just see what was the right move. Use that to just summon a level 3, and level 3 was all that was needed to destroy my unicorn. And even though the opponent here used all of his cards, he clearly did a better job than I did, so like I'm just doomed. I'm gonna lose, obviously. Yes, there is opportunity to learn when doing this practice, but it is the same opportunity you would learn just playing any random deck against any random opponent. Or maybe you learn a little bit because you're playing an opponent with the same deck or a similar deck. But it is a brutal way to learn regardless, in that it's easy to screw up, it's easy to not really get the strategies or even see the strategies that may exist. And that inherently is a problem, or at least a danger, that when playing any kind of collectible card game, in that you might have somebody that's claiming to teach you how to play the collectible card game, and really all they're doing is racking up victories for themselves and just bullying you, for lack of a better term, and you're really not being taught anything. Or at least you're not being taught any effective kind way. Okay. So if I tributed another card, I could destroy this. Or do this. Let's go with this. Okay. Then we're gonna bring back these two, I guess. Which then is, I think, going to let me get rid of this one, so I can just banish that. And I don't know if this guy can attack or not, but I don't think there's a good argument to special summoning anything else, so we'll just see if we win here. But it is a bitter victory still, in my opinion, because you're still coming off very much like you just are getting lucky, versus I've learned some amazing new strategy. The only thing I've learned is that I can if I summon this, I can use its abilities to synergize with another trap card that will summon characters from the graveyard to make them cheap tributes to activate this ability. This looks like an older card. Do we want to banish a trap card or just risk it? I think it's safe enough to just risk it. Even if this is a modernization of the 6 Samurai cards, it still feels a little weird so far, in that it doesn't feel like you're playing a lot of cards out of your graveyard, and a lot of modern decks you're playing cards even out of your banished pile. I'll go ahead and do this and see what happens. The question certainly is, how far can you get with just a couple of low level characters? This is the important question. What of these cards? See, I think this field spell might be the one to go for. But I'm not sure it's good enough. Activate an effect here that only kept it alive for a second. I only need to do 1500 damage, but certainly that could take forever. And yeah, this is where overusing cards comes into play. I basically need this to increase its count very high. And before that happens, I really just need to be able to summon something. Well, we got lucky, potentially here. And he had a very weak 100 attack character, and I had a relatively average attack 4-star character. But after that first game, I certainly still don't feel like I'm even 1/6 of the way towards the path of understanding how to play these new cards, or play even the old cards from the 6 Samurai expansion. And as long as you go through all the solo stories and actually just do them all and struggle through doing them all, you always have enough secondary resources to unlock these gates. Okay, so now we step up the difficulty to the 4-star. Pause now, I guess, if you want to read this. This time we're getting a card protector, and if we do it with our Zodiac Tri-Brigade custom deck, we'll get a couple legacy packs, which legacy packs are not really worth much. They give you old cards that aren't really playable in modern ranked play. the legacy of 25 years of Yu-Gi-Oh! As a trading card game is extremely overwhelming, in that there are just so many cards, but so few that are actually playable in modern ranked play, that somewhere around the 20th anniversary they probably should have just tried to reboot the whole series and ban all cards that are from the first 20 years, and then potentially re-release the cards that are still playable, perhaps with a different art style. That would kind of make a lot of sense. Is you have a 25-year-old art style here with black borders around the edges, which you kind of need in a collectible card game, because if it was just edge to edge, then it would be easy to kind of cheat and look at the cards and figure out if it's a spell or a monster card. But I could see them redoing all the art. I could see them abandoning the different elemental things, light, dark, water, fire, earth. I could see not having a row that says spell card here, so the picture could be a little bit better. I could see having the artwork go edge to edge in the internal image, and I could see rewriting the dictionary effectively as to how things are explained, perhaps using more symbols and more emoji-like characters to explain something. If this said each time a 6 samurai and then there was just an emoji of a monster is normal, and then there was just an emoji of a normal summon or a special summoned, so it would just be like a normal emoji summon / special emoji summon. You could save quite a bit of space in text form. At least in the English language it would save you space. But yeah, definitely I think modern cards have an argument for some kind of QR code or something on there where you could scan the code, or there's some serial number you could type in to get more detailed information about the card, or more detailed explanations on how the cards play. Yeah, we're really approaching a point where you could make a collectible card game where there's just NFC tags in every single card, and it doesn't actually raise the price that much. But a QR code wouldn't raise the price at all. I hope this is the right move first. So any of these seem like they can be special summoned at some level. Once we get to that point. Let's see, what do we have for options here? Don't want that one. Probably don't want that one. Don't want that one. None of these are particularly helpful, so I guess we probably do want this one. Guess we're summoning this one. Okay. Tribute another face-up 6 samurai monster, target a card on the field and destroy it. Special summon 1 6 samurai a Sheen effect monster from your main deck. And what can we summon here? We could summon a 2000, 2500, 2500. This is probably the right move. So we'll take that one, and that one. Because there's so many traps on the field. And then that would leave me with just these two options, which I wouldn't want to engage with. That opens up the door to summoning this. But you might be able to do something with this. Then that opens up the door to summoning this. Which I guess we'll do this. Which lets me draw 4 cards, and I maybe not taking much advantage of that. Draw 4 cards, and then you have to give 2 back. There's a lot going on here as far as options. Of course, it really just is going to come down to what can these trap cards or spell cards actually do. And did I really increase the situation or improve the situation by putting cards in the graveyard? Definitely seems like I can win the next turn. Yeah, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it still very much feels like, though I am winning, I'm doing very disparate things, different things, separate things around just every single card. Like, there really doesn't seem like there's just a thematic synergy that's happening here between the 6 Samurai or the legendary 6 Samurai cards, and instead I'm summoning fairly random cards with fairly random abilities that are working well together, but don't feel like they were ever really designed to work well together. This is a heroic challenger, this is a heroic champion, heroic, heroic, heroic. So all of a sudden we're doing heroic alongside this Saryuja Skull Dread that he doesn't look like a hero to me, he looks like a big dragon. Whereas This does look like a hero. Let's see, do we want to special summon anything? What are the attacks of these monsters right now? Let's see. Probably don't want to special summon anything. But I could see doing it. We could grab this one and this one. Double this attack by detaching 2 cards. That puts us in a very good position to win, unless they did something weird. Yeah, and it definitely seems to me like these are just spell cards that the player can't even activate, or the AI is programmed not to activate. And I guess that highlights an issue, certainly when even playing solo mode, in that it doesn't really give you an opportunity there to see what the cards were and learn more from the strategy. It pretty obviously, there should be a button that pops up there where you could see the card history, you could look at the field, you could see all the cards flipped over. Perhaps that should be a thing in real world paper trading card game rules too, that during friendly play or during tournament play, after you've defeated an enemy, or after you've defeated your human opponent must turn over their hand and show everything that's in their hand just for cheating reasons, and they must show their entire deck, and they must show what was face down on the table. I could see not showing the entire deck because that would just be slow, but it's pretty easy to just have it be part of the respectful way of play to flip over your hand and flip over everything that's on the field, flip over everything that's on the graveyard. At a certain level, some of the rules in tournament play of Yu-Gi-Oh! Do allow for your opponent to demand to see what's in your graveyard or banish pile, but that's pretty much it as far as a learning opportunity. And by having a rule like that, then you have an opportunity for new players to learn more, see more cards, learn to play better. So if I win with my deck in this third challenge, this 5-star difficulty challenge, I get 200 gems, which is about as much as you'll ever get from Yu-Gi-Oh! Not that gems buy you much more than just more cards. And if I beat it with the loner deck, I'll get this icon, which is also not worth much. Pause now if you want to read this. Apparently we're going to be playing with ZW cards, whatever ZW cards are. The good news though is it does seem like I'll get at least 2 out of 3 victories with the loner deck in this episode, where I only got 1 victory with a loner deck in the last solo episode. So you have a ZS card, a CS card, a legendary 6 samurai card, and we have a normal spell. These are Zexal, maybe. ZW, ZX, ZS. Rank up magic, spell rank down. I know XYZ monsters, but this isn't a XYZ monster. It's not labeled as one. Okay, if I control no cards, I can special summon that, so let's start with that. If the only monster you control is level 4 and not named ZX Armored Staged, you can special summon that, so let's start with that. Now, next question. Reveal one card in your hand. If you do, add the following and shuffle the revealed card into your deck. This one doesn't do anything. Let's see if we can special summon an XYZ monster. This is an XYZ summon. This is an XYZ summon. This is an XYZ summon. So, alright. We have 39 Utopia. We have 39 Utopia Double. We have 39 Utopia Sage. And we have 39 Utopia Rising. Which Utopia Double is super rare and Utopia Sage is less. Okay, let's start with this one. And hope this is correct. Correct order. So using those two cards gave extra abilities here. But yeah, we are in a crazy position here where all of a sudden you're just not even doing Legendary 6 Samurai. Utopia the Lightning. Just trying to find which one of these would be highest attack. Let's go with this one. The weirdness in particular here, and see, I put a card on the top of my deck and then I shuffle my deck, so that's not a good strategy. Is it just, this feels completely different from the last challenge I just did. Just doing something completely different cards. Attach to, I guess that's the only thing this card can do, because it can't attack directly. So detach that. Can't activate this spell. So I picked something with a large attack, but then didn't read the instructions, so I can't actually attack with it. Then I stupidly summon something with 0 attack in attack position. Feels like I could get lucky and turn this around, but it is all just going to be kind of random. Random actions. Okay. Just activating absolutely everything. Let's get back to something that at least looks like it can work. Suppose activating this is not a bad idea. So we're looking for things with the highest attacks. It's still A, I can't attack at all, and B, I'm still lower in attack than the opponent. So yeah, I'm left scratching my head here, just going, where is the strategy? Why is the AI opponent thinking and showing a thinking animation? It's kind of funny, they don't even use this thinking animation in ranked play. It might be helpful to use it as an indicator to show that it's not your turn. Very often I'm distracted when playing ranked play and do not realize that the game is actually waiting for me to react to the opponent in some way. But yeah, this all just feels like a mess of a totally new collection of cards. It feels like maybe the goal here is to still summon Xian, but clearly I haven't really seen an opportunity to do that. It feels like almost every card in here is more focused on ZW cards, ZX cards, ZS cards. And I would argue that the XYZ cards in particular, in that gimmick, feels like it just goes on for a little too long. That there's just way too many XYZ cards and way too many Utopia cards. Clearly Utopia for that iteration of whatever sequel Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series it was the equivalent of Dark Magician. And so almost every episode I'm sure the main protagonist was summoning a Utopia card to win the game. No, that is probably a criticism that's fairly valid to make against the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series in the first place, is that very often it is a case where... Why can that one attack finally? Very often it's a case where almost every episode ends by Yugi summoning Dark Magician and winning the battle with the exact same strategy over and over again. They're where more practical Yu-Gi-Oh card playing would have you have multiple outs, multiple endings and ways to win with multiple different cards. Even my deck that's built around the Zodiac Tri-Brigade has 3 or 4 different ways you can win, and cards that work together a lot more. It isn't all just pushing to one very specific path and one very specific goal. Like, it's bad deck building in any card game to have one card that you have to have on the field to really win, because what do you do once that one card gets banished or gets stymied or negated in its effect? If anything, Yu-Gi-Oh is so old in its age, you're playing cards more to negate your opponent's abilities than you are to even activate your own. And probably once you've gotten to that point, that's when you know a card game is older than average and over the hill. Doesn't mean the card game isn't still playable and isn't still fun, but when you have a situation where most of the time you are stopping your other opponent from playing, then you have hit that level of chess effectively, where a expert chess player is way more often moving in a way to block your opponent's moves than they are to just take one pawn. At least it feels like it's that way sometimes in chess. I'm no expert at chess. And then the exact opposite of that certainly is the case with new card games, where the original form of Yu-Gi-Oh would have just been you summon a monster and it attacks and does damage, and that's it. And that's too simple in the early days. Of course, starting simple is not a problem if you grow over time with complexity. If I do win this game, it's definitely going to feel like it is just out of pure sheer luck. Okay, what do we want to do? We can't activate this. This would... probably makes sense to tribute this. Apparently not. Okay. Well, I could definitely be in trouble here. Let's do 1,000 damage there. Set that down like that's a trap card. And let's end the turn. Stupidly, I should have just put it in defense mode. That's another problem that I think I personally have with Yu-Gi-Oh, but I could see a lot of people having with Yu-Gi-Oh, is that there just isn't a lot of embracing of the defense mode mechanic, even though the defense mode mechanic has been around since the beginning. It's just not, particularly for a Westerner or for an American, in their general way of thinking to go on the defensive. I don't know how you could make a defense mode in a card game much better. You could make it a little bit more tempting where it did double damage if somebody attacked it, and it had higher defense. But I think that's pretty much it. If anything, I suspect begs the thought that instead of it being considered a defense mode, it should be an extra effect mode where all cards when in defense mode can activate an effect, but when cards are in attack mode they can't activate an effect. And yeah, I don't want to win. I don't want to end on a loss, so let's just play my Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck and still highlight how what was maybe a year ago a top tier meta deck of modern times can do to an expansion like this. Okay, we'll go ahead and activate this. Tossing that. And we'll take that. And then we'll summon this. We're not going to be attacking this turn, so we will go through these XYZ cards quickly. This card's ability would let you summon a certain kind of card in another spot, where this card's ability lets you attach a certain kind of card from your graveyard to the existing stack, whereas this card's ability lets you attack directly, and then this card's ability lets you destroy a face-up card by detaching a card. And any of these XYZ cards doing any damage allows you to summon Zeus. If an XYZ monster battled this turn, you can also XYZ summon Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. They don't have to even do damage, they just have to battle. But since it's the first turn, I can't attack, so it's probably best just to play Trident. So you can destroy a face-up card. This is a continuous spell, so we'll just go ahead and destroy it quickly. This is kind of weak in attack in the starting position. So, yeah, an effective board clear in that instance. And I could be stymied here by activating this ability, which is going to let me toss this, which is going to let me toss this, which is going to come full circle and give me back a 1900 attack creature, which now allows me to summon it and then activate its ability to banish 4 things. We won't jump around too crazy on that. We want one of these banished, and we want one of these banished. We'll activate his ability, which will banish the face down card, so there's no concern there. And we'll attack here. We don't need to activate either one of these cards at the moment. And let's see. I don't think we can do anything else more, so that ends the turn this time. Now, while he has the advantage of 7,100 life points to 5,600, and he was able to destroy that character, I probably have a slight card advantage with a 3,000 attack here versus a 21 attack, and I have 3 cards, or he has only 2, particularly since I can now summon this and face up, which is kind of crazy to do, but whatever. And that lets me banish 4 cards, although one of the ones I banished was a mistake and not the right card to banish, but I don't have to play that tight because I have pretty much won at this point. Unless a major board clear happens or something else occurs. He summons something that can do 5,400 attack. I've won here. He couldn't even play. And no real reason to dilly-dally here. You don't want to activate those abilities because there's nothing face up to defeat. I could go through the whole cycle and summon some more things. Of course, that would continue to just trigger the abilities. The smart move would be to continue down this path and summon this one and this one, but no real need. So, yeah, another example of while a 5-star difficulty versus the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck might struggle a little bit or get unlucky a little bit, it still really is no competition at all. I did not really have to spend any extra effort or design any new strategies or play cards in any special way. I just played the exact same strategy that I always play with the Zodiac Tri-Brigade, and it just works because the cards are newer, the cards are better. Which creates the problem of having a trading card game that has about 10,000 cards with less than 3,000 of them really being playable. And arguably at the top tier ranking level, I imagine it's closer to 500 cards that are actually playable. Let's get the end of the story for at least this chapter, which I imagine it's not much of anything. There's something slightly robotic about the way this armor looks, which we really haven't seen anything talking about robots. After some time, Shien of the Six Samurai inherited his father's position and began calling himself Great Shogun Shien, and alongside him stood the newly appointed Six Samurai. They have sworn their absolute loyalty and fight as the backbone of the army. So I wonder if this is a new group of people taking on the name of Six Samurai. The samurai that fought together on the battlefield before he became shogun continued to be active in a variety of ways. Kagiki was feared as a four-armed demon god with secondary arms that he can manipulate at will. And these are robot arms. He was long active on the battlefield, but retired from the Six Samurai due to his injuries and went on to serve on the home front. Is this the same character or is this a different character? Again, looks cyborg-esque, robotic. Kizan was the glorious swordsman that won many battles and was feared by the enemy due to rumors that he was able to cut through the soul. Upon his victory in the Imperial match, he was entrusted with the recruitment and cultivation of new candidates for the next generation of Six Samurai. And again, robotic, older versions of them. As Grandmaster of the Six Samurai, his skill with the sword showed no signs of wavering, even late into his years. The achievements of the newly forged Six Samurai trained by said commander spoke for themselves. Now it'd be very weird if they didn't talk about all 6 of the new or old Six Samurai. Arguably they should be talking about 12 of the Six Samurai, the old generation and the new generation. Inchi was said to have fiercely charged into the enemy forces and fought like a rampaging wild boar. When Shin's advisor retired, Inishi coordinated internal affairs and took over the role of advising Shin. He was appointed to the position of Chancellor, and even after leaving the battlefield, his fight continues. In warfare and sometimes as a secret agent, quote-unquote Mizuho took on the task of taking revenge through covert operations. So, this looks like this might be a lady samurai, which I don't think they really let ladies be samurai. If anything, she might make more sense to be a ninja. She was bound to Shinai as husband and wife. After his death, she decided to pursue the life of monkhood. So she just goes off to become a monk, I guess, with a knife glinting. But when dealing with those posing a threat to Shien, she still conducts her assignments the same way she always did. So here we have 4 of the 6 samurai being shown, and I'm pretty sure they've only talked about maybe 5 people. I wasn't keeping count. Along the 6 samurai was who once drove across the battlefield was Shien. So I guess maybe Shien was counted as one of the samurais. And we know that one of the original 6 samurai disappeared and was never seen from again. And if they were going to tell a more interesting story, it would have been a case that that missing 6 samurai guy actually betrayed Shien and comes back as an enemy. Stood the new 6 samurai along with the next generation of vassals. Supported by these vassals, great Shogun Shien continued to fight for supremacy and unification of the country. Yep. So, gates cleared, and we've unlocked yet another secret pack. Although in between the last recording and this one, I gained just enough gems to open some secret packs. So now I really, once again, am not in a good position to spend any gems. With any luck, I would suspect I may already have a lot of these cards. Yeah, it is definitely the case where this secret pack would not be a good candidate to purchase more secret packs on there. We have a lot of the normals and rares, and more I should be looking at the super rares and ultra rares and just trying to see if it makes sense to try and collect all of those. And in this case, it definitely doesn't feel like there is a good argument to do that. So yeah, that'll get us back to the main menu, and then from the solo menu we'd have to scroll all the way down. to really show very little other than the struggle for the samurai is now done, and there's now just 2 solo modes to do. Although 2 years in, it's pretty obvious you don't need to hold on to any of these extras. You should probably just do them as fast as possible, even though they're not really rewarding you by very much. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there might be some links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.